First of all, beware of those teachers who speak right words but teach wrong ideas. When in common life one person is saying one thing and doing another, we call him a hypocrite. You may ask me a question. How is it possible if somebody speaks the right words and teaching the wrong ideas? Well, this kind of thing happens all the time in acting business, especially among those actors who are not that talented, not that responsible. For example, somebody plays a psychiatrist or a scientist, and you can clearly see that this actor absolutely doesn't understand what he's saying. He's pretending he understands. He makes a very smart face if he's a scientist, but inside you feel he has absolutely nothing. Well, of course, actor doesn't have to be scientist to play a scientist. If you want to play somebody better, to portray him as close to life, then you have to at least study actual character like De Niro did when he was playing the taxi driver. Well, I'll give you an example of one teacher. You may recognize him by style. I won't say what his name is. This teacher claims that good vocal teacher can only be the one who is the great singer himself. And not just a good singer, but the great singer himself. Then he goes on and says that not every great singer can be a good teacher. This is also very logical. I agree with this guy totally. From the same teacher, you will never hear him singing or showing anything because he simply doesn't have the talent to show or to explain. I think the deep problem lies that we have to express our ideas with words. And words are very, very limited. Great Russian writer Gogol expressed one beautiful idea, that every written sentence, every written idea is wrong already on a paper. What he meant by that the words cannot really express the depth of the true ideas. And some people, they cover themselves, as I spoke about, beware of appoggio teachers who claim to be appoggio, but in fact teach some other techniques. It means simply that they don't understand this technique in depth. They never discovered this technique. They just accepted some idea, or even worse, they realized this technique becomes popular, so they got attached their name to it. Okay, oh, appoggio becomes popular. Okay, I am an appoggio singer or appoggio teacher. So it is very difficult to see the difference between those who are saying right things and those who are not only saying right things but doing right things. And for this you need your intuition. It's the same way. When you see the actors playing someone and you see the falsehood, intuition tells you something is wrong. So unfortunately there is no clear indication of how you can see the difference between the ones who is saying the same things, and doing the same things, and teaching the same things, and the ones who is so-called teacher hypocrite or ignorant teacher who just says and repeats the ideas of others without really understanding or feeling deeply what these ideas really carry. In that context, I also have to say that's why the life lessons with teachers are very important, with good teachers, of course. Not necessarily regular. If you're talented, if you don't have money to go on every day, not every day, but weekly lesson at least, but you still need somebody, a professional, who will check you out, because you have many dangers going alone there. In my program, for example, I have like more than 200 videos. No matter how many videos and how many subjects I will cover, it will be still a very small pledge to what is called learning singing, because Because when we deal with live sound, the live sound is necessary to hear, both from the student and the teacher. Well, imagine this situation. Your friend comes to you and says, listen, you have to explain philosophy of Plato to your students. You answering him, listen, I don't understand Plato myself. How can I explain it to my students? Then you say, well, it's very simple. You just take Plato's book of quotes, quote him very often, and say that he's the greatest philosopher of all times. After that, nobody will question if you understand what you're saying. That's what, unfortunately, most of the academicians do. They copy other people's ideas and mechanically using them, or mechanically trying to teach them without them understanding it so deeply. You can see that phenomenon in schools, especially because in universities you have probably more talented teachers than in schools in quantity. But in schools, most of the teachers get angry at kids who asking them normal questions because they don't understand. They just put them back by saying, you interrupt my agenda. Please listen and don't interrupt what I'm saying. And then they repeat the same lesson almost by heart, mechanically saying the words they will never understand. But it seems so impressive because the teacher is already an authority. And so you believe in what he says. He clearly understands. He understands his ideas. To my point, the reason why most of the great singers, truly great singers, cannot be great teachers lies in the ambition, or rather in a fulfilled ambition. Most of the singers who achieved glory and fame as singers, they already have their ambition fulfilled. And very few of them would go for another profession, which they basically start from zero. Of course, people, you're not told that this particular maestro is amateur teacher. He's a great maestro, but he's an amateur teacher. Nobody tells you that, of course, but we have to admit that we are all amateurs when we start teaching. I was an amateur teacher myself, being a professional singer. But of course I wouldn't say to my students at 25 years ago that, listen, I'm an amateur, I'm just starting, you know. This is an important message also. Reading an article of one of those teachers hypocrites who say one thing and do another, I noticed one interesting and populistic opinion that he's trying to pull. He says an interesting thing, and if you read it first, you all be for that statement, of course. Teacher should not turn his students into guinea pigs. Oh, this sounds very, those teachers who turn their students into guinea pigs, those teachers should be fired by shooting squad. But if you look at this in a deeper sense, should lesson be conducted as experiment every time you conduct a lesson? Or should lesson be conducted at something established for centuries? This is a school of this, a particular person, and those are the religious principles of this school. So I would say, of course, if you say, you're going to be my guinea pig, you will never have a student. How then we cope with the statement of Enrico Caruso? If you don't experiment with yourself, you are not growing up as a singer. Or let me put it in a very negative way. If you're not a guinea pig of your own self, you're not going to learn singing very well. Of course, I take lesson as experiment all the time. And I think when I stop taking lesson as experiment, I think I'll be finished as a voice teacher. Of course, if experiment is conducted by an ignorant person, that will be a disaster. Experiment conducted by a professional always leads to discoveries. And that's the whole reason of having a lesson with the teacher, to have exchanged ideas. And not just one way, one religious way, because that one way is very limited. Those teachers who say that the lesson should not be conducted as an experiment are very limited teachers. They're afraid to go away from the method. They did not create it, but they took it from somebody else. So it usually happens like this. If you take something that you don't understand at all, or at least in depth, you just take it, memorize it, and follow it, because you don't understand the reasons behind this. So of course you just will follow the principles, and eventually it becomes religious principles, because the more from the source this idea go, the less understandable and comprehensive it becomes. So the question, should be lessons conducted as experiment? I don't see any other ways of a good lesson. Thank you very much. It was Franco Tenelli.